Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about other video games as well. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is episode 26 of Not Just Nintendo. You know, last week it was episode 25, and 25 was a pretty good number. 26, you know, nothing particularly special about 26 that I can think of. The only thing I can think of is that, you know, we just started on the every other week schedule rather than the weekly schedule, and, you know, had we stuck to the weekly schedule, this would have been half a year of the podcast, but instead it's been over half a year now, so I guess that's still pretty cool. You know, I changed the podcast art, not specifically because it had been half a year, just because I felt like it. The art, you know, before it was the Mario on the left, not Zelda, oh my god, Link from Zelda on the right, and then the 64 controller, like clip art of it in the middle. Now it is still Mario on the left, but it's a different image. Donkey Kong on the right, and then in the middle is switch to Joy-Cons instead, so I kind of changed the art. I hope you guys like it. I did post a poll in the Discord and on YouTube. I've been trying to do some more community posts and stuff lately because, I don't know, I'm hoping to get some more engagement on those. But anyway, so, you know, I posted a poll over there to see if people were happy with the change, and I think it was pretty mixed, but I don't know. As long as everybody doesn't hate it, I'm just going to leave it for now. I think, you know, we could always go back. There's no reason not to, and, I mean, who knows, maybe I'll decide one day to change it again. We'll have a third logo. You know, I change the logo every week, right? It'll be great. But anyways, so welcome back. We had, let's see, it's August. You know, we had Gamescom in the last week. We'll be talking about some things announced there in the second part of the show. I know, you know, Gamescom isn't, you know, Gamescom's not really something I'm that big on. I don't like, you know, I don't usually go and watch all the press conferences and stuff. It's just not really my thing. I like reading about it after the fact, but I don't really care too much about, you know, like I guess it'd be kind of neat to be there, I suppose. But as far as watching it live and stuff, I mean, who cares? There was also the Kirby Air Riders Direct that came out of nowhere. Nintendo, of course, they did their little Kirby Air Riders Direct. You know, I will say something I kind of don't really like about how Nintendo's new strategy here with the Directs. It's like, it feels like they don't really give you a whole lot of notice anymore. They just kind of drop it on YouTube the day before and they schedule it and they're like, yaha, we're doing a Nintendo Direct tomorrow. Hope you all turn up or show up. You know, it's like, okay, well, could have told us a couple days ago or something, or I don't know. I don't even think this one was on the Nintendo Today app. They just kind of tossed it out. They're like, yeah, people will see it, you know, and I think it's a little, over cocky, right? It's cocky. It comes off as overconfident, right? Because they're just like, oh yeah, people will hear about this somehow, you know, I'm sure. The word of mouth on the Kirby Air Riders Direct will be crazy. Everybody and their mother will be walking down the street talking about the Kirby Air Riders Direct. Like, I don't know. Come on, Nintendo. Like, you've got to notice that maybe perhaps it's a better idea to just, you know, maybe tell some people that some things are happening, you know, it'd be nice. It's like that, you know, back last month in July when they added, what was I saying? Oh, they added Mario Strikers on GameCube to the GameCube Switch Online service. And of course, you know, they did that, and, you know, that was cool, but they announced it like 2 days before on the Nintendo Today app of all places, and I'm like, okay, not everybody checks the Nintendo Today app. And I'm sure they do things like that with the hopes that people will check the Nintendo Today app, but still, I feel like, you know, maybe there's a better way to do this, maybe there's, you know, more logical ways to do this. And, you know, I think, really, at the end of the day, this Kirby Air Riders Direct got like a third, even less than a third of the viewership of like the main Switch 2 presentation one. And I mean, of course, it is less important, but I think that it can't be understated, you know, the effect of them not telling anybody anything. Like, I think they really ought to, you know, give us a little bit more warning on this. And again, I think it just comes across as cocky and overconfident about their reach, you know. So there's that, and also on this same kind of topic, they announced the Chibi Robo, GameCube game. Chibi Robo was coming over to the GameCube Switch Online service. I had not really checked that out just yet. I did accidentally open it. I got a notification on the Switch, on the Nintendo Switch Online app. It was like, ooh, played Chibi Robo, and I'm like, okay, I will at some point. And I accidentally clicked on it, and it, like, just launched the game for me. It's like, haha, you're gonna play this now, and you're gonna like it. I'm like, whoa, I'm already playing 10,000 too many games. I can't be starting anymore. So anyways, so I saw the home screen. I know the opening menu. But anyway, so I'm gonna play Kirby, not Kirby, Chibi Robo at some point. I'm gonna play that at some point. I need to really go back to Wind Waker on the GameCube service because that was something I started playing on launch day. That was kind of the thing. I was like super excited for the Switch 2 to come out. I mean, I was gonna play Mario Kart World, but my big thing was gonna be Wind Waker, and then I just really kind of got away from it. And it wasn't that I wasn't liking it. I don't know. I feel like Zelda games in the last year or so. I've been trying to play Zelda games, and I kind of bounce off because they're long and they're a little intimidating sometimes. And I definitely like them. I definitely like them, but I have too many things I'm playing to get too invested. So I definitely want to go back and play Wind Waker, and so I'll get there. I'll get there for sure. But anyways, that's not the point. I don't even know what I was talking about. I'm just rambling at this point, but that's what you're here for, right? If you're not here for that, you're probably gone by now anyways. We're already 6 minutes in, so anybody who doesn't want to hear me ramble is probably long left by now. So as I alluded to earlier, we are definitely going to talk about some news and stuff today in the second segment. But in the first segment, as per usual, I'm going to be talking about the games that I've been playing. And of course, it's really been one thing, I would say, in the last 2 weeks. It's really been one thing in particular, and I'm sure many of you can probably guess what that one game might have been. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3. It's Donkey Kong Bananza. I've been playing Donkey Kong Bananza. I actually beat Donkey Kong Bananza finally. I beat the game. I posted over in Discord, and one of my regular viewers was like, "Already? It's only been like 12 seconds." And I'm like, "Dude, it's been a month. Had a month." But anyways, I guess time flies by, right? But anyways, so I beat Bonanza in a month. I know a lot of people beat this game. I don't know, weeks ago, a month ago. Well, I was gonna say more than a month ago, but really not more than a month ago. The game just came out a month ago. But anyways, so some people already beat this. I know I was bewildered like 3 days after I was seeing all these people like I beat Bonanza. I'm like, do you not have a life? I mean, I don't either, but geez. Anyways, but so it's definitely some people were able to beat it a little bit sooner. But I finally caught up. Took me about 33 hours and a little bit. Of course, I did a lot of extra stuff. I have like 650 some bananas in the end, so I'm definitely gonna go back and get them all, or at least get. I don't think there's a cap in Bonanza like there is in Odyssey. I'm pretty sure you can just get as many as you want with the gold and the banana gems and stuff. You can buy extras, so there's not really a specific number you have to get to, but I'm gonna get to 1,000. I've heard that that's kind of the thing you're supposed to do, is get to 1,000, and that's kind of all you need. That's like 100% of the bananas if you get 1,000, even though technically you get more if you just bought them. But anyways, I don't know who's doing that. Who's just gonna sit around and get to like 10,000 bananas? Like, that's stupid. But anyways, so I'm gonna get 1,000 bananas. I don't know when I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna probably work on that over the next, I don't know, 9 years. Who knows? I don't know. It could be 2 weeks. Could be 9 years. I don't know. I'm not really. There's no time period specifically that I'm working on this towards. So I'm working on that, but I also want to go back and get the fossils. That's definitely high priority as well. So, I'm gonna try to 100% the game, except for the ancient records. Not ancient records; those are the big ones. The little records, like the soundtrack CDs. They're not CDs; they're records. But anyways, the soundtrack. You go around the game, you collect the soundtrack by killing enemies. But the problem with the soundtrack in Bonanza and the unlockables with the soundtrack is like there's no like specific enemy that has a specific piece of the soundtrack. It's like you literally just have to go around and just kill any old enemy, and any enemy in the game can randomly just happen to drop a soundtrack track. So it's like, there's like 110 tracks or something, 115 or something like that, and you literally just have to stand around killing enemies over and 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 over again in hopes that you get the soundtrack. I'm like, this is stupid. Who wants to do this? So I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it does seem like the kind of thing that I could do. So I'm just gonna not say anything. I'm not gonna do it. I promise I'm not gonna do it. I don't know. I might end up doing it. We'll see what happens. I don't think I'm gonna do it. I don't think I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna get the bananas. I'm gonna get the fossils, and then I'll probably be done. If I'm an idiot, I might also get the soundtrack CDs. Or record. They're not CDs. They're records. What's wrong with me? Anyways, they're the soundtrack. I might get the soundtrack. Doesn't matter. But if I do, then I'm 100%. If I don't, then honestly, I'm still gonna consider it 100%. I think most people are considering it 100% to get everything but the records, because like, who wants to get all the records? So, Anyways, that was where I was at with Bonanza. I was hoping to talk about Bonanza a little bit more, but I don't know if it's just I don't know if it's me just in general talking about video games or if it's just Bonanza specifically, because I know I've noticed it a lot with Bonanza these last few weeks. I find it very difficult to talk about Bonanza specifically, and again, it might just be video games. Maybe I'm just really struggling here with ideas, but specifically with Bonanza, I feel like I've struggled to kind of express what I love so much about the game and in specific parts and stuff that I enjoyed. But I've got to say, and this might come as a bit of a bit of a surprise considering my tastes that I often make very clear. I've been kind of thinking about this because I beat this game a few days ago on the 21st, I want to say, um, and I think it's my second best game or second favorite game of all time. I think it's my second favorite game of all time because obviously nothing's probably going to top Mario 64. Although because of how amazing Bonanza was, it has restored my faith that there is the potential that a new 3D Mario game, or I guess potentially another Donkey Kong game, who knows, but definitely a 3D Mario game. I think there is a possibility, a small possibility, that a new 3D Mario game, could potentially outclass Mario 64 in my mind. But I'm not gonna bet on it. Let's not go expecting that to happen because I don't think it's gonna happen. But I'm just saying I now think it's possible. Whereas had you asked me a month ago, I would have said no. Mario 64 is gonna be my favorite game forever, and I still think that's quite likely that Mario 64 will be my favorite game forever. But I think it is. There's a small possibility that potentially a new 3D Mario game, could outclass it. So we'll see. Maybe in 8 years I'll be here like, oh my gosh, new 3D Mario, and it's amazing, and it's the best game of all time, and who knows? I hope so, right? I mean, obviously I'd love for a new game to come out that's as good as 64, because, gosh, I mean, 64 is amazing. But anyways, Bonanza, it's incredible, especially the last sequence, the last couple hours. Bonanza, wow, it's a game. It's a it's a game. You gotta play it. You gotta play it. I know. Most people probably have, but man, if you haven't played Bonanza, stop what you're doing, go to the store, buy a $450 Switch 2, buy a $70 Donkey Kong Bonanza, and play the darn thing, and just for 30 hours straight, don't stop. You gotta play the game. You gotta get all the bananas, stop what you're doing right now, put the next, 2 days and your next $550, put it all towards Bonanza, because, geez, this game is incredible. So, anyways, no, but I'm sure there's some people that are gonna wait for the Switch 2, until there's a OLED version or something. I mean, but anyways, but seriously though, if you have a Switch 2 for sure, you've got to play Bonanza. I think it's the best game on Switch 2. I think it's better than any game on Switch 1. I think it's better than any game Nintendo's put out this century so far. Again, I don't know. I should probably not make such bold claims quite yet because I did beat the game 3 days ago. But really, it was that good. I really, really loved my time with Bonanza. I think before I know I pretty much did definitively say it's my second favorite game of all time, but I'm thinking my opinion could change. I need to probably try to replay it at some point for my opinion to be set in stone, and I think I'm going to probably do that next year. I'm thinking pretty early next year I'm going to pick up Bonanza again and do a replay of it. I don't think I'm going to get everything this time. I'm just going to get, not the bare bones, but I'm going to get, some stuff, just whatever I happen across. I think next year, pretty early on in the year, I'm going to play Bonanza again, and I think that will, help me to decide truly if it's my second favorite game of all time. But, I think, as soon as I beat it, and actually a little bit before I beat it, at the, towards the end of the game, there's a main reveal, and if you've played the game and you've beat the game, you absolutely know what I'm talking about. It's before the second to last, it's like the second to last world, basically. The very last world is like a, just a little bit to the boss, right? Like it's pretty short. But the one right before that, actually it's two before that. At the end of the two before that, there's a certain reveal that really I was gonna say really surprised me, but to be honest, I actually just earlier that day, because I knew I was coming close to the end, I was like, what if this happened? And, this person or this character did this. And, I was like, and I completely 100% guessed it, and there's a reason as to why. I don't want I don't want to get into spoilers. I will probably have a spoiler thing later for Bonanza. I'll have like a 5-minute thing, like I got to talk about this real quick. But right now, I'm not going to say that just yet. I want to do that at the end of the segment. But Yeah, Bonanza. It's phenomenal, and like I said, I need to replay it before I can definitively say it's the second best game of all time. But I think it's the second best game of all time. I was thinking about it, the day before, the day of beating it, before I had beat it. I was like, can this game is this game really, that good? I'm like, man, I think it is. And I was like, well, no, because I think there's a couple things I don't like about it, right? Because I was like, yeah, there's probably a couple problems with it. But then it occurred to me, I was like, well, you know what? My current second favorite game of all time is Mario Sunshine, and there's definitely some things wrong with that game too. So, I don't think necessarily a game has to be absolutely flawless. Even Mario 64 is my favorite game of all time. Mario 64 is not a perfect game. I was going to say it's not a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. But I don't think it's quite flawless. I do think it has a couple of issues. If you're someone who cares about visuals, then yeah, definitely the visuals could be better. Right? No secret here. I'm not. Wow, I know, crazy, blasphemous that I would consider Mario 64 not the most amazing looking game. Personally, I don't care about visuals, so that's not really something that's much of a consideration for me as far as how a game or how good a game is, right? So that I don't care. What I do care about is the camera. Because, geez, Mario 64 does not have the best camera. It actually has one of the worst cameras. But at least, hey, at least it has a camera. Games like Crash Bandicoot and stuff don't have that camera control. And, of course, I can respect Mario 64. I think that's a big thing, too. I respect it. And I think it's probably, I think it's the second most influential game of all time. I think the most influential game of all time is Super Mario Brothers on NES, and the second most influential is Super Mario 64. Now, after that, I don't know, I couldn't say. It's hard to say. Of course, you could make any sort of argument. But my point stands. It's a very important game. It's a very good game. It's an amazing game. Bonanza, obviously, I don't think it has quite the same influence. It's brand new. Maybe in 20 years it will. I doubt it. But who knows? I mean. But I think it is close to as good. I think it's still. I think there's a pretty big gap there still between Bonanza and Mario 64. And I think a new 3D Mario game would probably go in that gap. I think it would probably be better than Bonanza, but not as good as Mario 64. And another thing with Bonanza, I think this has really made me want to go back to Super Mario Odyssey. Because, every week, not every week, most weeks, I complain about Super Mario Odyssey. Because Super Mario Odyssey, for me, was a huge disappointment. And I know that's not really a super common opinion, and a lot of people love the game, think it's amazing. I know there were some people out there back then, and even now, that say it's better than 64, or, 64 is the second best now, or, it's overtaken 64 in some capacity, some fashion. And obviously, I strongly disagree. I think Mario Odyssey is actually. I think it's worse than 64. I think it's worse than Sunshine. Jeez, I can't talk. And I think it's worse than both Galaxy games. I think it's worse than 3D World. It's worse than Bowser's Fury. It is probably better than 3D Land. That's not saying a whole lot. And it is better than the DS remake on Super 64 DS because that's also an awful remake. If you anyways, let's not get into it. The point is, I didn't like Odyssey very much. My problems with Odyssey, they were numerous. First of all, yes, I do think Mario controlled really fluidly and really well in Mario Odyssey. And as a quick side note, I know some people had said that they don't think Donkey Kong in Bonanza controls as fluidly as Mario does in Odyssey. And first of all, he's an ape. He's an ape. Look at him, okay? Look at Mario in Odyssey. All right, and then look at Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Bananza, and tell me that Donkey Kong should be able to move around as fast and jump as high and and have the crazy hops that Mario does. But seriously, though, seriously, I understand. I think it almost makes sense that DK would be a little cumbersome. That said, I don't think DK is all that cumbersome. I actually think he still controls very well. I think DK is very fun to control. Personally, I actually kind of like DK's movement better than Mario's in Mario 64. Or not Mario 64, Mario Odyssey, I should say. And I do still like Mario 64's movement probably better than Odyssey. I really like the air kick, is specifically my thing that I prefer in 64. But anyways, my point is, I don't think the movement was as, flawless in Odyssey as some people like to suggest, and I think that it is still better, or maybe not better, but at least as good. I don't think Bonanza suffers, right? I know some people were like, oh, well, that's definitely something Odyssey still has in Bonanza, but no, I personally think Bonanza still has really good movement. The collectibles, I think, are much, I don't know how to say this. They're hidden much better. I think the fossils, right? The fossils are kind of the similar thing to the purple coins from Odyssey. But the fossils, I think, are hidden much better. I think they're in better spots, and to be honest, I think the fossils are a little less useful. Well, maybe they're not less useful. I don't know. Personally, I really didn't use the costumes in Bonanza. I know that was a feature you could engage with. You could go to the stores, just like in Odyssey, and you could buy new costumes, new colorations, new, whatever you wanted for Donkey Kong. You can make him purple with, I don't know, a baker's hat, like whatever you wanted, right? And that's cool. And you could do that to Mario too in Odyssey. I guess what is kind of cool about Bonanza is that the Donkey Kong outfits actually do have an effect, right? So, like, I bought one pretty early in the game in a water area that increased Donkey Kong swimming speed by 15%, or sorry, 5%, 10%, whatever. I think it might have been 15, but whatever it is, it was a decent upgrade. I was like, all right, cool. And I bought those with the fossils. So the fossils actually do have like an actual use, right? And in Mario Odyssey, there's really no use. They're all just cosmetic things, which is cool. And I'm glad that there were the cosmetic things in Odyssey. And I used the costumes here and there in Odyssey. It's funny because I actually didn't use the costumes in Donkey Kong Bonanza, even though they were actually far more useful in Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is kind of an interesting thing that I've thought about. But anyway, so I think overall, right, the fossils have a better use in Bonanza. The bananas themselves have a better use in Bonanza, potentially. I think it's quite arguable, right? Because in Odyssey, you need X amount of moons to progress through the game. You need you need 10 moons to get to the next kingdom, or you need 10 moons to do the next thing in this one kingdom, right? There's checkpoints where they block you off, you need moons. I mean, this is obviously very standard behavior for most games, especially 3D platformers. Bonanza doesn't have any of that. There's very little that, blocks you off. At the very end of the game, there's a couple of things where it's like you need a certain amount of gold, right? Which, to be fair, if you don't have that much gold, you've been doing something wrong, right? If you get to that point in the game, in Bonanza, if you get right to the end of the game and you don't have enough gold to move on, you've been doing something wrong, because it's really not much gold you need, and it's very easy to get a lot of gold in Bonanza. You'd almost have to try not to have enough gold. So, anyways, but so there's nothing though that you need. It never says, oh, you need 100 bananas, or you need 10 bananas, or you need 1 banana. There's nothing. Never are you forced to get a banana, as far as I know. Maybe there's something with the tutorial where they're like, hey, you collect this banana, and if you try to leave, they won't let you. I don't know. Maybe there's something, but as far as I know, I don't think there's anything that tells you have to collect bananas. So you could go through the whole game, I think, again, unless there's something at the very beginning. I believe you could go through the whole game without getting a single one, or maybe you have to get the one at the beginning and then you're done, right? But you could go through pretty much the whole game without getting one. Which is kind of strange. So, in a way, you could say they're less useful in Bonanza, right? Because you don't actually need them to beat the game. But at the same time, they're more useful, because when you get 5 bananas in Bonanza, you get to access a skill tree, and you get to make upgrades and stuff. So there's a lot of, cool things that you can do to Donkey Kong to upgrade his moveset. And I will say, I got all the way to the end of the game, and I didn't max out the skill tree. And I got 650-some bananas. So you do actually need 1,000 bananas, or I don't know if it's 1,000, but it's close to 1,000. You do need a ridiculous amount of bananas to actually, finish out the skill tree. So unless you're specifically trying to 100% the bananas and stuff before you beat the game, you're probably not going to max out the skill tree at the end of the game, which, to be honest, I kind of wish I would have, right? Because I do kind of like that in a game, right? You get at the very end of the game and you're all maxed out, you're just oh wow, you can't beat me. It's like an RPG kind of feeling, right? You're at the max level at the final boss, right? It's that kind of idea, but you can't do that really in Bonanza. Maybe you can if you really go and actually get literally every single banana. I don't know. I don't know. Personally, though, I had all the main abilities. There's a certain group of abilities that are for Donkey Kong in his standard mode, and then, of course, as you probably know, there are Bonanza abilities in the game. There's, I think, 4 or 5 of them. 4 or 5, I don't know. And they're all different animals, and they all have their own abilities. And each of those animals also have a few extra abilities on the skill tree. So I had maxed out all of the regular Donkey Kong moves, but I also maxed out the next Bonanza, the first Bonanza, but the ones after that, I'd only put certain things into. I hadn't maxed them out quite the same, so anyways, but I definitely will max out the skill tree when I collect all the bananas, so I don't know. I'm not, I don't know if I'll even revisit Bonanza in the next 2 weeks or not. It might not be for a little while before I go back to it, but we'll see what happens. I've definitely had a blast with it. I will say that the last time I was talking about Bonanza on the podcast, I was right actually still towards the end of the game. There really wasn't much I did in the last 2 weeks here, so I didn't really see many other layers after last podcast. The one right after last podcast, I would say wasn't the most interesting of themes, but it's sort of like towards the end of the game, so I can sort of understand even why it might not have the most interesting of themes. And then the very final area also I don't think has the most interesting of themes. But so even if thematically it doesn't end on a high note, I think the story, honestly, it's weird. I never would have thought the story would have made any difference in a Donkey Kong game, which, to be fair, I mean, it's pretty simplistic. But for some reason, the story right at the end there comes in, and it's like, oh shoot, there's a story in this game. Who would have thought? And you do. I'm not going to spoil anything until the spoiler segment, but yeah, there's some stuff right at the end of the game. It's like the last 2 hours or so, 3 hours maybe, that really. It's awesome. I mean, honestly, it's amazing. The last few hours of this game are its best. You've got to play to the end here. You've got to finish it. It's incredible. Bonanza was absolutely incredible. I love Bonanza so much. I just made my top 50 on the 4th of July. I just put that out, so it hasn't even been 2 months, and already I'm like, well, shoot, I should have I should have waited. I should have waited and made one now. So I don't know. I'm already kind of here thinking like, all right, when are we making this next top 50? Not this year, definitely not this year, because I'm already like it's already almost September. I'm gonna have school starting next week. I'm gonna have marching band. Well, marching band already kind of started. It was pretty busy here a couple weeks ago, and now it's gonna be pretty busy again, starting really this week. Really, that you're listening to this, it's starting back up this week. So yeah, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be busy. It's gonna be busy for sure. I'm gonna be working on scripting some video essays and stuff while in school. And then luckily the podcast is only every other week now, so I do think the podcast will be able to go out on its scheduled time. So don't worry too much about the podcast. I think that'll be okay. I think the episodes might end up being a little shorter. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm probably not going to have as much to talk about. It's going to be a lot of news and stuff, a lot of speculation. Maybe I'll come up with something to rank. Maybe I'll rank my favorite platformers or something. I don't know. There's going to be weird stuff like that because I just don't have don't have as much time as I'd like, to be honest. But anyway, so yeah, the next couple of months particularly are going to be questionable. September and October in particular because of marching band and because of school. I mean, obviously school's still going to be going on after October, but it's really that combo, right? Like if it was just marching band or just school, I'd be all right. But with the two of them together, it's like, oh, okay, that's a little interesting. So it's going to mean interesting things for the channel. Now, to be honest, though, I have been kind of slacking a little bit over the summer. I've been slacking just a little bit with the channel and with the podcast and stuff. So to be honest, it might not actually make that much of a difference because if I really lock in after school starts on the YouTube channel, then maybe it'll be about the same output. But I don't know. It could also end up being a little less. We'll just have to see what happens. Obviously, I'll know better what's going to happen in a week or so when school starts. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit next week. But, I guess I should bring this up now. It's probably not going to happen for a little while. But, I know I said that the podcast was every other week now rather than every week. But I'm going to leave it open to the fact that potentially on any given week, I might decide on an off week to make an episode. And so here's what I'll say, because, maybe after marching band stops, because that's over at the end of October. So maybe in November, I'll be like, oh, I'm actually not too busy right now, and I'll decide to go back to the weekly schedule. So here's what I'll say then. Expect an episode every 2 weeks on Tuesday, as it's been, right? Expect that. But there may be a chance that an episode comes out a week early, right? And if an episode comes out a week early and there's only a 1 week gap, expect a 2 week gap again the next time, unless I say otherwise, right? So if episode 452 comes out 1 week, and then 2 weeks later it's 453, and then 2 weeks later 454, but then it's only 1 week till 455. Don't expect 456 to be the next week. Expect it to be 2 weeks later, if that makes sense, right? So I guess that's what I'm saying. There might be some weeks where I end up, or there might be some periods where I end up making back-to-back week episodes. But that probably won't happen for a little while, I'm thinking, because things are going to be busy. But maybe in November that could happen. We'll see. But yeah, unless I say that I'm permanently changing the schedule, just expect it to be every other week. But there might be times this winter when that's not the case, because I'm going to be less busy in the winter for sure. The winter's going to be a little lighter. So yeah, that's that's I guess that's what I was trying to say. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of what else there is to say about Bonanza. Bonanza was really a good time. I'm not sure if I missed him or what exactly happened, but right at the end there, the last few worlds, I didn't really see Cranky Kong a whole lot. And all the other worlds, you saw Cranky Kong at different points in the worlds, and he would, go on a little rant, and you'd get a banana at the end, kind of like Peach back in Odyssey. But I didn't really see him in the last few layers. I know you have to actually find him, right? So maybe I just missed him, or maybe he actually isn't in the last couple layers. I don't know. But yeah, it's a little bit like Peach or like Captain Toad actually from the Mario Odyssey. There were two of them back then. So, and there's a couple other things. There's Quiz Tome, and he's this blue fractum, whatever it is. They're these blue crystalline people, objects, inanimate object, whatever it is. They're like these weird blue crystal guys. And they repair when you break them. If you punch them and they shatter, they're gonna just repair themselves. And so there's one of those guys in each world that has a top hat, and he gives you a quiz, kind of like the Sphinx, kind of like the Sphinx from Odyssey. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you can see direct, correlations, no, not correlations. What am I talking about? You can see direct throughway between some things in Odyssey and then their counterparts in Bonanza. Obviously, it was the same team, so that's kind of to be expected. But anyways, so there's that. But so I don't know. Bonanza overall, like I said, fantastic game. Probably my second favorite. I definitely there's probably some more things I'll come up with next week to talk about with it. I'll probably have to go ahead and write some things down on a paper somewhere and be like, hey, these are things I've got to talk about with Bonanza, right? Because you know me, I'm a little forgetful here. I guess before we get into some spoilers for Bonanza, I'll talk about the last couple things for this segment, and then right at the end of the segment, I'll talk about some spoilers for Bonanza, and then we'll go on to the second segment. So it'll be a nice transition for anybody who doesn't want to get spoiled on stuff. So moving away from Bonanza, since I beat Bonanza, I've gone back to Yakuza 0, right? Of course, back at that direct, the partner showcase direct back in July, a few weeks ago. It's been almost a month now, right? Whatever it was, there was that partner showcase, and they announced Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2. But of course, back on launch day of the Switch, we got Yakuza 0, which Yakuza 0, for those who don't know, is the prequel to the original Yakuza game that came out on the PS2 and got remade on the PS3 and then got remade again on the PS4. So the Yakuza Kiwami game is the first Yakuza game. It's actually a remake of the first Yakuza game. Yakuza 0 is the prequel to that game that came out in 2015. So there's Yakuza 0, in timeline order, there's Yakuza 0, and then there's Kiwami and Kiwami 2. And so that's what we're getting on Switch 2 so far. Now, I'm assuming, because they've started at the beginning, and they've already put out multiple games, my assumption is that they're going to continue, right? So maybe next time we'll get 3, maybe we'll get 4, whatever it is, right? Or there was a collection on PS4, there was the Yakuza collection that was 3 through 6. So we might get that as well. I don't know. But anyways, whatever we get, it does seem like they're actually going to go ahead and put out the whole series, or at least, a large chunk of the earlier parts of the series. And I'm totally down, because, I've been playing Yakuza 0, and I've got to say, it's fantastic. I love Yakuza 0 so far. It's fantastic. I just said that, but I'm going to say it again. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So, anyways. But yes, Yakuza 0 is fantastic. It's a good game. It's a really good game. And so I'm excited for Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2. That's going to come out in November. I think it was November 13th, I believe, is what we heard about that, and those are going to be fantastic. So anyways, like I said, I'm about 15 hours into Yakuza. It was about 9 or so until, just a few days ago. I've just been back to it just recently, because I hadn't played it in a month. I was kind of, when Bonanza came out, I kind of got away from, honestly, a lot of games other than Bonanza. Bonanza was kind of the only thing I played for, most of the beginnings of August. So I did kind of come back to Yakuza here, and obviously I'm now beaten Bonanza, but I'm not done with Bonanza. I still am gonna obviously go back to it and 100% it. So I am going to still be playing that, and that's, I'm not done with Yakuza yet either, but I'm kind of getting there. So those will be two big things that when I'm done with those, that'll be a big, like, clear spot. And I'm going to move back to Metroid Prime Remastered, I believe, because I know there's been some rumors here recently that we could potentially see, like, a shadow drop of Metroid Prime 2 and 3 at a potential September Direct. And if that's going to happen, then I'm going to want to be able to play them so I can play Prime 4 when that comes out. Because as it currently stands, I'm not playing Metroid Prime 4 when it comes out. Because I want to play through the whole Prime series, 1, 2, 3. I think I can forego Hunters. I think I can forego Hunters, but I definitely want to play through 1, 2, and 3, the Prime games. Luckily, Prime 1 is very accessible on Switch. Prime 2, not so accessible, and it's on GameCube, and I'm not really looking to play a game like that on GameCube. It just, I don't know. Especially a game like Prime 2, I'd really like to get a remake. Wow, dang, that was, sorry, my microphone stand just, like, fell like a foot. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, so I'm really looking for Prime 2 to come to Switch 2, and I'm really looking for Prime 3 to come to Switch 2. I'm not, like, totally opposed to playing Prime 3 on the Wii, but I figure, hey, if they're going to put them out on Switch 2, I'd much rather play them there. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping they put them out on Switch 2. I feel like they should have put them out on Switch 2 earlier, or on Switch 1 last year or something, but for some reason, they never got around to it, so hopefully they'll get around to it pretty soon, because I really like for those games to come out. I find it frankly ridiculous that they would put out Metroid Prime 4 without, putting out a way to get Metroid Prime 2 and 3. And I guess it's possible they just decide to drop Prime 2 on Switch Online. But even still, then that still leaves Prime 3 not playable on Switch 2. And I would think they'd want to make the whole series playable on Switch 2 before Prime 4 came out. But apparently not, because it's, that game's coming out potentially in a month, and doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like we're getting any news on that. So, I don't know. People were saying September for Prime 4. I'm looking like it's probably going to be more like October now, because I'm pretty sure we didn't get any sort of release date at Gamescom, unless I really missed something here. And, it's already almost September, so I'm thinking it's probably going to be an October thing now. Maybe even a November thing. We'll see what happens, but I don't know. So, we'll see. But yeah, right now, I'm not going to play Metroid Prime 4, unless, of course, 2 and 3 come out. And if they do, I want to be ready for them. So that's why I need to go back to Prime 1 and beat that probably in the next few weeks, really, because I need to be ready in case Prime 2 does come out. So I need to get onto that ASAP. I might even need to slow down a little bit on Yakuza, because Yakuza, I don't have a time frame that I want to beat it in, just before November 13th, when Kiwami comes out. So I can probably slow down on Yakuza sometime over the next week or so, and transition over to Metroid Prime Remastered. I was like a few hours into Prime Remastered, but then I got like super lost, and I mean, of course, that's what you expect in a Metroid game. But yeah, I just was like, I kind of got turned off of it because of how crazily lost I got, and I couldn't quite figure out where to go, and I eventually just kind of gave up, and I moved on to other things. So I do need to go back to that. I'm not really sure. I might try to get unstuck, but I might also just restart the whole game, because just, as much as I like Metroid, sometimes, I don't know. I just finally got around to Metroid this year, and just finally liked it for the first time this year, because every other time I've tried to try it up until this year, I've not liked Metroid games at all, because I just get lost and stuff. So, I was finally feeling better about it this year. I played through, Metroid Zero Mission and Fusion, and now I played through Super Metroid back in April, and I was feeling better about those games, and then I got stuck on Prime, so I don't know. Maybe it's just always going to be a thing for me that I just quit every time I play a Metroid game for the first time. And then the second time I do better, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. Metroid, I like Metroid. Metroid's definitely not like my favorite series yet. Maybe I'll get there, but we'll see what happens. Maybe Metroid Other M will be the game to do it, right? But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on Metroid Prime 4, and that's kind of where I'm at in general on Switch 2 stuff. Obviously, also on Switch, I am still technically playing Tears of the Kingdom on live stream, although that's questionable because I haven't live streamed it in like 2 months. So I need to kind of get back to that, because, geez, I'm never going to finish that game or do another live stream if I don't get on it soon, so maybe I will in the next 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. I'm thinking about it. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at on Switch 2 right now. I've got to finish Bonanza, got to finish Yakuza 0, and I've got to go back to Prime 1, and then it's just going to leave Tears as the game I'm Let's playing. So I need to go back to some Switch Online stuff and clean that up as well, because I know on Switch Online I have Mario's Picross on the Game Boy that I was playing, and I do kind of want to play that whole game through because I think that'd be pretty cool. And it was pretty fun, so I think I'll go back to that. And then there was also Wind Waker, so I am probably going to go back to Wind Waker. After that, as far as stuff to start on Switch and Switch 2, I'm not really entirely sure. I am going to probably buy Kirby in a few days, and that's going to upset some things. So I don't know. It's gonna be weird. I'm gonna probably have to slow down on Bonanza and slow down on Yakuza so I can play Kirby when that comes out. This is of course is the Switch 2 edition of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And I'm going to want to slow down on those so I can play Metroid Prime Remastered in the event that Metroid Prime 2 and 3 do drop on Switch 2. So that's kind of what we're looking at here for the next couple of weeks on Switch 2 for me. It's going to be Kirby when that comes out, and then probably some Yakuza and maybe a little bit of Bonanza as well, and hopefully some Metroid Prime if I'm feeling up to it. On PC, the only thing I'm really worried about right now is Final Fantasy 3. I was trying to play through the whole Final Fantasy series. I'm just trying to play a lot of 2D JRPGs. And I was playing through Final Fantasy as one of the many series I was working on. So as soon as I'm done with Final Fantasy 3, I'm going to start on Breath of Fire instead on Switch Online. And then when I'm done with that, I'll go back to Final Fantasy. I'll play the fourth one. So there's a lot of stuff. I have this all planned out, and there's a method to my madness every now and then. On PlayStation, because I haven't played anything on PS5 in a minute. It's been a bit. On PlayStation, I need to get back to Astrobot because it's been like 5 months. This is kind of getting out of hand. Not 5 months. It's been like 4 months. But anyways, it's getting a little out of hand. It's been so long since I played Astrobot, and I was really loving Astrobot back when I was playing it. And I'm thinking that would be a good conversation to have, Bonanza versus Astrobot. Now, obviously, I'm probably going to like Bonanza better, but I still think Astrobot's a great game, so I think there's a chance that would be a fun conversation to have, so I say conversation, I'm talking to myself here. There's nobody else to talk to. But yeah, so I may end up doing that. We'll see what happens. Who knows? I don't know. Who knows, right? But I do, like I said, on PlayStation, I want to get back to Astrobot. I'm dropping Yooka-Laylee in the Impossible Lair. I started that game a few months ago, right before the Switch 2 came out, and I kind of wasn't feeling it. I tried to come back to it last month, and I was like, God, this is terrible. I think it was just because I was out of the loop on the controls, and I needed to kind of, I needed to try to ease back into it, and I think since I'm only like 2 hours in, it's probably better off to just, call it good and come back at some point. So I'm going to probably give up on Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I know Yooka Replayly is coming out on Switch 2. I think it was supposed to be later this year, so maybe I'll play that, and maybe then I'll play Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair after that. So I'm going to drop Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, and then I also have on my shelf here, because I have all the stuff I'm playing or playing soon on my shelf. I have Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection, because I played Assassin's Creed, the first game, last year back in May, so it's been over a year now. And I wanted to continue through the series, but I kind of had a weird hiccup that happened. I was trying to play the second game on the Xbox 360 version, and of course, this is a common thing with the Xbox 360 version, but I didn't know it. As it turns out, the 360 version has a weird glitch where if the Xbox connects or disconnects to the internet while the game is open, you lose your save file. And it doesn't seem like there's any way to get it back. So I was 8 hours into the game and then I lost my save file. So I was like, screw this, and I quit playing the game. This was a long time ago now. This is last year actually. This was late last year, November or something. So it's been a long time. But then just a few months ago, I bought Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection or trilogy, whatever it's called, Ezio Collection, so I could play that on PS4 instead, because the issue is not on PS4, as far as I know. So I'm going to try Assassin's Creed 2 again at some point, but not quite yet. I was going to try it pretty soon, and then I got the Uncharted Collection, the Nathan Drake Collection, and I've instead decided to play that first. So my point is, I need to clean up some stuff on Switch 2. I would like to finish out of the next 3 things, or I'd say 4 things. There's 4 big things that I'm going to be playing in the next couple of weeks. And that's going to be Bonanza, Yakuza, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and Metroid Prime. Of those 4 things, I'd probably like to finish up 2 of them before I go back to Astrobot. And after I go back to Astrobot, I'll be playing 2 of those things on Switch and Astrobot. And after I'm done with Astrobot, then I can move on to Uncharted. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then besides PlayStation, there's also the Wii U. I'd like to play through Super Paper Mario on the Wii. I started Super Paper Mario back in a Let's Play back at the end of last year, and I don't know, the Let's Play was doing really bad, and I just kind of quit playing the game, and I was like, whatever. And I meant to go back, and I did go back to it a little bit. I played a little bit more of it off camera. I actually got pretty far in as well. But then it was right at the end of the year last year, and I had to make my end of the year ranking list, and it was like December 14th or so, or like December 10th or something like that. And I was like, okay, I need to either, and I was like, here are my options. I can finish Super Paper Mario and like one other game for my ranking, or I can finish Mario and Luigi Brothership, because that game I still had quite a bit to go on, and so I had to try to finish that. And so I decided instead to beat Brothership and its launch year, so I could put that on my list for last year. And then I decided to skip Super Paper Mario and come back to it later. Of course, in February, I tried to come back to it. It had been so long that I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. And now it's August, so it's been a long time now. It's been like literally like 8 months, or almost 9 months. So I don't know. I'm probably going to drop Super Paper Mario and then come back to it sometime in the next month or so. Maybe 2 months. I don't know. I'm thinking before the end of the year, I'm going to come back to Super Paper Mario, because that was definitely a good game, and I'd like to try that again. But I'm probably going to restart. So that's kind of my plans for the next couple of months here, and there's really not a whole lot coming out on the Switch 2 that I just have to have on day one. There's Kirby for sure. That's going to happen this week. It's on Thursday. And then there's also Yakuza, but that's not until November. So I don't think there's anything else. I'm just going to hold off till like, next year, early next year, maybe late this year, Christmas time, somewhere in there. I'm going to wait till that kind of time and see if anything else drops down in sale. Maybe I'll get some stuff for Christmas. I don't know. Anyways, but that's kind of, I'm just waiting on some of that stuff, because I'm not really too bothered about some of these things. I know there's like, there's Final Fantasy Tactics or those kinds of games. I'm like, those are all things that I'd like to have, I'd like to play, but I'm not really like dying to play any of those things. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. That's my plans for the next few months. I do need to get back to PlayStation. Need to get back to the Wii U. It's really just been the Switch 2 since it came out, which makes sense. It's a brand new console, right? But I definitely need to get back to some of those things as well, because, like I said, I need to wrap up a couple things on Switch 2, and then I need to wrap up a couple things on PlayStation, and then I'll be feeling a lot better about my situation. And then I can play some Switch Online stuff again. That'll be fun. So things like Chibi Robo, right? And I also want to play Banjo-Kazooie. That's another thing that I want to try to beat. Probably not this year, because it looks like there's a lot of stuff this year, so. Anyways, that was a crazy tangent we went off on, but I guess real quick, I'm going to do some spoilers for Donkey Kong Bananza before the next segment. So next segment is going to be news. We're going to talk about news, and that'll be the rest of the show. I don't know how long this episode is going to be, but I think it'll be pretty normal length, I'm thinking. But anyways, so we're going to talk about Bananza spoilers. I'm going to give you a little countdown, so if you're, if you're in the car, or you're like walking around, or you're doing dishes and you're not at your phone, you get a warning here. I'm going to talk about spoilers in Donkey Kong Bananza. If you don't want to be spoiled, you better frickin' leave. There's going to be a timestamp in the description for what part to skip to. It'll be after the music break for the second segment. So I'm giving you a countdown here. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1/2, 1/4, 0. You're done. That's it. Time's up. Time's up. Donkey Kong Bananza. It's amazing. Oh my god. Let's talk about the final thing at the end. Right there at the end, you're there, like, the final layer is the planet core, right? Because the whole premise of the game is you gotta get to the planet core. So you and Pauline, because you're traveling with Pauline, you guys can get back to the surface, which I found interesting from the start, right? There's a rock you find at the start of the game. It ends up being Pauline, and the whole thing is like, hey, we've got to go to the center of the planet, right? We're pretty close to the surface, but we've got to go all the way to the center of the planet so that then we can go to the surface of the planet. Because the whole premise was that if you got to the center of the planet, there was the Bananian root, and the Bananian root could grant any wish, and the wish was going to be that they could go to the surface. So anyway, so you've got to bring Pauline, and the two of you work together or whatever. I mean, it's a little one-sided, but anyways. So the two of you are going to the planet core, and then when you get there, you're going to go to the surface. So you go through the whole game, blah, blah, blah. The story doesn't really matter. Finally, you get to the end. So this is right before the end. The very final layer is the planet core, right? You get to the planet core. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The layer right before the planet core is the forbidden layer. And in the forbidden layer, you think that this is the last level of the game. You think this is it, right? Because it's like everyone's telling you to turn back. Everyone's talking about, you know, the main villains of the game. The main villains of the game are Void Kong. It's like this Void Co is the company. He's like this mining company. He's the boss of this mining company. And earlier on in the game, he had two henchmen, Grumpy Kong and some girl. I don't know. I can't remember their names. But anyways, they were these two guys, and you had to fight them, or a guy and a girl. You had to fight them throughout the game, but they ended up quitting partway through the game. Anyway, it's the story is like not that important. But anyways, the Void Kong guy is not the most interesting of villains, we'll say. Right, I was a little disappointed through the whole game that they didn't bring back somebody like King K. Rool, right? Because I was like, King K. Rool, you know, he's always been the Donkey Kong villain. It's kind of a shame that we didn't get King K. Rool in the new Donkey Kong game. But it's alright, you know, whatever, these guys are kind of lame, but it's a Donkey Kong game. I'm not really too bothered about, you know, I'm not too bothered about the story. It is what it is. It's a Donkey Kong game, right? And then I had heard for weeks and weeks, you know, since the game came out, really, people were like, there's a big reveal at the end of the game, you know, don't get spoiled on it. I'm like, reveal in a Donkey Kong game? Like, what do you mean a reveal? It's what are you talking about? That's stupid. And sure enough, everybody was right. So this was the day before, or the day of me beating it, which I think was the 21st. It was like a Thursday or something. And I was sitting here and I was like, you know what? I wonder if what I was trying to think what this big reveal could be. I was like, wouldn't it be crazy if we find out that the real villain all along was King K. Rool? And then, of course, just like Donkey Kong Country 2, for those who haven't played, or the original actually, I think it's the original game. For those who haven't played it, in the original game, King K. Rool, you fight King K. Rool, you beat him, and then he gets back up, and the credits start rolling, and all of the C's in the credits are replaced with a K. And then King K. Rool gets back up, and you have to fight him again. It's like a fake out, right? And that's happened in a few games before, but Donkey Kong Country is like famous for this big old fake out with King K. Rool. And I was like, wouldn't it be so funny? I was actually talking to my dad about this because he wants to play the game when I'm done with it. I was like, wouldn't it be so funny if they brought back King K. Rool right at the end, and there was a fake out after you beat him, right? And we were kind of laughing about it. It's like, King K. Rool's not even in the game. Sure enough, they freaking did it. I called it. Now, of course, this isn't like, I don't think this is the craziest thing ever, because it has happened in another Donkey Kong game. But I still think it's pretty crazy that Nintendo even went through the lengths of doing that again. Like, I never would have thought that they would call back that hard to the rare days of Donkey Kong. And I actually think it's really cool that they respected Rare so much, even though they weren't even, like, usually you don't get that kind of credit. Like, Nintendo doesn't give that kind of credit to other studios very often. So I think it's really crazy that they were like, hey, you know, here's some credit to the Rare guys from back in the day. And it was also such a cool reference for any fan of Donkey Kong. Like, you know, this game is a love letter to 3D Mario people, because the 3D Mario people haven't had a game in 8 years, right? So it very much is similar to the 3D Mario game, but it's also, more than anything, a love letter to the people that played the Donkey Kong Country games back in the day. Like, this game, it references Donkey Kong 64 and some other things here and there, but really, these games are for the people that played the country games back in the day. And of course, I wasn't around back then, but I also have played the country games in more recent times, and I've loved them. And man, Bananza is great. Like, I think they should have called it Donkey Kong Country Bananza, but I think that'd be kind of a weird name. But anyways, it really is a Donkey Kong Country game through and through. Just in 3D, right? Obviously, it's not quite the same, but, you know, it kind of gets the same points across. And wow, yeah, King K. Rool, they did King K. Rool really well. I think the boss fight with King K. Rool was fantastic. The whole way through the game, I had been complaining about how the boss fights were kind of easy. The whole game was kind of easy. Right at the end of the game, you fight King K. Rool. It's kind of a tough fight. It's kind of a tough fight right there at the end. I'm like, man, this thing is kind of tough. Now, of course, I then found out right at the end of the game that you can buy these cans that can give you an extra life in a fight. I didn't know about that, because I didn't need to know about that, because the game's super easy. But that last fight, I used those, because it was pretty tough. But yeah, I was like, the last fight with King K. Rool, and you've got to use your banana powers, you've got to use the elephant, because he shoots the balls out of his cannon like he does back in the country games, and you've got to suck up the stuff it leaves behind and then shoot it back at him, and oh my gosh, what a fight. Man, what a fight that was with King K. Rool. I thought that was fantastic. The spectacle of it all was great. And then once you fight him, of course, it's the whole fake out, and he gets back up, and you have to fight him again. And then, right at the end of the game, you get your wish granted by the Bananium root, and you're like skyrocketing it up from the earth, you're going back to the surface, and then all of a sudden, you hear the Gangplank Galleon from Donkey Kong Country 2, oh my gosh. And King K. Rool, he's freaking back. It's the credits, and it's got all the K's in it again. I was like sitting here, I was like, oh my gosh, like I was freaking out. This was the greatest thing of all time. And you fight King K. Rool again. You don't really fight him actually. You just kind of avoid him as you're going up to the surface. He's like shooting at you. You've got to step out of the way, and I don't know. I mean, it's not hard, but it was really cool. It was about the spectacle. They had remixed music from the country games. Man. What an ending. And then you pop out in New Donk frickin' City. New Donk frickin' City, man. From Odyssey. I'm not a fan of Odyssey, but man, New Donk frickin' City. Yeah. I think, did you fight him again there? I can't remember. I think you fought him. Yeah, I think the second fight with King K. Rool was in New Donk City. I think, right? Yeah, pretty sure. But anyways, but yeah, and then, of course, you're there in New Donk City, and it gets restored, and Pauline goes off on her way to be, like, a musician. Obviously, that's kind of setting things up for Super Mario Odyssey. Yeah, and then, of course, after you beat the game, you go back to one of the first areas in the game, and you have to go back to one of the warp eels, and you find out that Pauline has come back to, revisit you, which obviously was, the excuse to have the powers back so you could continue to play the game and get all the bananas with Pauline. Because if you didn't have Pauline, you couldn't get many of the bananas because you wouldn't have your sensor ability, you wouldn't have your ability to transform into bananas. Obviously, it makes sense, but anyways, they just had to have some reason for you to get Pauline back, so they kind of just put it in at the end of the game, and that's cool. I'm happy they did, but yeah, what a twist of events with King K. Rool. I did not think they were actually going to do that. I thought it would be awesome if they did, but I never expected they actually would, and then they did. They freaking did it, man, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. Gangplank, Galleon, some of the remixes in this game of old Donkey Kong Country games were amazing. I mean, oh my god. Seriously, one of the best games of all time. I think it's my second favorite. And before the final sequence of the game, like the last few hours, I was like, okay, this is probably a top 10 game. I was like, this is probably somewhere in the 8 or 9 area. After those last few hours, I'm like, nah, man, this is number 2. This is number 2. Maybe 3, I don't know. Maybe 3, but it is like, it's that good. It is amazing. Nintendo, they cooked. They cooked on this. Wow. Yeah, what a game. What a game that was. So, anyways, for anybody who stuck around for the spoilers, we're going to go to a musical break right now, and then when we come back, we're going to have spoilers, or not spoilers, we're going to have news for all sorts of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. That'll be to end out the show. We'll just have news for the rest of the show. Thanks for everybody who tuned in for the spoilers, and back to the main show now. Yo, welcome back to the main show. This is the second segment now of the show. Welcome back, everybody. We have some news to cover, as per usual. That's kind of how things tend to go these days. I'm going to start out with some stuff from Gamescom. Now, I actually didn't watch the opening night of Gamescom live. I watched it later, like yesterday. I watched it, later. But, I found a cool article from Games Radar recapping all the stuff as well, so I kind of have it all here on a list. I'm just going to kind of read off some of the stuff. A lot of it I probably won't have much to say about. I'm probably not going to read everything. So there's a Fallout Season 2 trailer, the TV show. Jeff Keighley showed us some Hollow Knight Silksong gameplay. We'll talk a little bit more about Silksong later. I know I have other stuff to say on that, but obviously that was a big, crazy thing that happened in the last couple of weeks. I think that was just 3 or 4 days ago, right? It was Gamescom opening night. But anyways, I'm recording this on Monday. But yeah, so Hollow Knight Silksong is coming out. I know this has been something that a lot of people have waited for 7 or 8 years at this point. I believe Hollow Knight came out in 2017, but then it didn't get popular till 2018 on the Switch, I believe, unless I'm getting the years wrong. Maybe it's 2018 and 19. I thought it was 17 and 18, but I could be wrong. But obviously, Hollow Knight Silksong was announced way back then as DLC originally for Hollow Knight, and then as time went on, it became its own game. And I know, back in 2019, I believe, Xbox had some gameplay of it, and, we've seen gameplay at multiple different times, throughout the last, 25 years, not 25, but 7 or 8. Um, and apparently it's finally coming out. It's coming out in like September 3rd or 4th, I thought. I know I said we were going to talk about this more later, but I guess now we're talking about it now. So yeah, September 4th, that's what it was. September 4th, Hollow Knight Silksong. I know a lot of people are going to be thrilled about that. Personally, I'm not going to grab it. I will probably play Silksong at some point, but I haven't even played the first Hollow Knight, and I do want to play the first Hollow Knight at some point. But I kind of, I've just recently gotten into Metroidvanias. I've tried a couple years and years ago, but really just this year, I've finally been open to Metroid again, and again, I say again, but this time I've actually beaten 3 games. So I'm working through the Metroid series. When I play all the Metroid games, all the 2D ones at least, and then maybe all the Prime ones as well, then I'll try to branch out and play some other Metroidvanias. I want to play some of the Castlevania games, and then I want to play some of these indie Metroidvanias of recent years. Mainly Hollow Knight is one of the bigger ones because I know a lot of people love it. So I will definitely get to Hollow Knight probably next year, to be honest, because I'm thinking, really with Metroid, I've played through the 3 on Switch Online. So there's Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Fusion, and Super Metroid on Switch Online. Besides those 3, there's 2 other ones. There's Metroid Samus Returns, which is the remake of Metroid 2, from Game Boy, and then there is Metroid Dread, which is the newest one on the Switch. And I happen to not have either of those 2 games. Metroid Samus Returns is on 3DS, which I don't love playing things on the 3DS, to be honest. But I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it to play the game because I've heard it's good. So whenever I find those games physically, I'll pick those up and I'll play those at some point. And I could see myself playing one of those 2 games before the end of the year, and then the other one probably next year, unless I just find them both super soon. But I don't know. I'm kind of looking, but I'm not like hunting around like online or anything. I don't buy a whole lot of stuff online. I like looking for stuff in stores, and all the stores around me are closing, and it's such a shame. But anyways, so at some point I'll get Metroid Dread. At some point I'll get Metroid Samus Returns. I don't care in what order I play those 2 games in, but when I do get those 2 games and when I play them, then I'll go ahead and branch out to other Metroidvanias. And I do think I'll put Hollow Knight as one of the earlier ones I'd try because I know a lot of people. It's one of a lot of people's favorites. So that's yeah. So Hollow Knight Silksong, first it's not like a big thing for me. It is, I guess, moderately exciting because it's like, oh, finally people will stop talking about this after all these years. Maybe we can hear about some other thing for once. But so I guess that's cool, and I'm sure it's probably going to be a good game. I'm sure a lot of people will be very happy with it. But I guess what surprises me here is because Hollow Knight ended up being so high profile of an indie game, I would have thought that the next Hollow Knight game would have been announced in a big like Xbox Direct or in a big Nintendo Direct, and it would have had like a multiple month announcement to launch cycle. But for some reason, they were like, hey, we'll announce it like 2 weeks out. Yeah, it's fine. People will buy it anyway. And I mean, I guess that's true. People are going to buy it anyway, but I don't know. I find it interesting. All right. Black Ops 7 is coming out in November next. No, I don't know. It's yeah, apparently Black Ops 7. I think the biggest news from this reveal, because I don't care about Call of Duty. Man, it is raining so hard outside. That's crazy. I hope you guys can't hear that. It is like raining like really bad. Anyways, okay. Black Ops 7. It is coming out this year in November. I think we knew it was coming out this year. It's been given its release date. I think the bigger news from this announcement, the only thing that kind of interests me, is that it's still coming to PS4 and Xbox One. There's been very little now in the last year or two. They've finally started to leave the PS4 and the Xbox One in the dust. As things have finally are starting to move on, and it's a little surprising that such a big game would still be coming out on the PS4 and the Xbox One. But obviously, they don't want to leave behind that audience. Something like, Call of Duty's got a large audience, and they want to make sure they can widen the appeal as much as possible. So I guess it does make sense. I would assume this is probably going to be like the last Call of Duty that's on PS4 and Xbox One, right? I mean, maybe this is a crazy assumption to make, but that's my guess. Is this is the last one, the last hurrah? Maybe there's going to be one more. I don't know, but. Anyways, I'm probably never going to play a Call of Duty game. Actually, that's not true. I probably will at some point. I'll probably play the campaigns for some of the older ones at some point. At some point. Um, I'm not really looking to. So it's just going to be one of those things that maybe 10 years from now, I'm like, hey, I guess I'll try this and maybe I'll like it. I don't know. Probably not, to be honest. We'll see what happens. But I'm pretty sure I will never play um, more than perhaps one game of an online Call of Duty match. And only if it's like I've bought a Call of Duty game for the campaign and I'm like gonna try it one time just to see what it's like. I highly doubt I'll ever actually. I mean, I'm never gonna get into Call of Duty. I can actually guarantee you that it's never gonna happen. All right, Black Myth Wukong. There's a new game. Yay, Tencent. Welcome our Chinese overlords. Yay. I don't know. I probably will never play Black Myth Wukong because it's a whole thing. But there's a new Black Myth gang, Zhongku. I don't know, man. I don't know how to say that. I hope there's nobody Chinese in the audience. Probably laughing at me right now. That's cool. I don't know how to say that. Zhongkui, whatever. Who cares? There's a new Black Myth gang. I don't know. Somebody will probably like it. Who cares? Really, really couldn't care. There's a Lego Batman game, or maybe it's DLC. I actually don't really. I was a little confused as to what was going on. I think it's a new game, right? Yeah, it is a new game. So a new Lego Batman game. I know there were Lego Batman games years ago. They did a few of them. So I guess that's honestly that's kind of surprising that they're still leaning into the Lego games so hardcore. I know. The Lego games kind of they went through a long phase there where there were like multiple every year, and then they kind of slowed down a little bit. And I think the big turning point here recently was Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Because when that game came out, like, because at that point when it was first announced, I actually still kind of cared about Lego games. And I mean, I want to say it was announced in what 2020 or something like 2019. So it was a long time ago. So I pre-ordered it from GameStop, and it got delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed just over and over again. I mean, it ended up coming out like 2 or 3 years after it was originally announced. And I think what happened was they just upped the scope of the game so dramatically, and so it ended up being, from what all I've heard, a pretty good game. I only played a little bit of it myself. I probably will play it again at some point, but now I actually have a PC version of it too because it was free on Epic Games on Star Wars Day. So I guess if I want to play it there, I could as well. I'll probably still just play it on Switch if I ever do go back to it. But anyways, my point is, Lego games, it seemed like they're kind of in a new era right now. As somebody who doesn't really play them anymore, I can look at it and still see, but like, hey, look, it definitely seems like there's some weird stuff going on. With that. So I don't know. I'm assuming this Lego Batman game is also going to be a pretty large scope. I don't know anything about it. I don't really care to know much about it, but I guess it's interesting. All right, one more level. They were the developers of Ghost Runner. They are now making a new Souls-like. It's a first-person Souls-like. And to be fair, this Gamescom show I think was kind of the show of Souls-likes. I don't know. It seemed like that was what was going on. But apparently, this one, I don't really care about Souls-likes. I've no interest in playing a whole lot of Souls-likes. Like I said, I am going to play Hollow Knight. That's kind of a Souls-like. Maybe at some point I'll go back to Elden Ring, but I wouldn't place any money on it. But apparently now they're making the Souls like. The only reason I kind of cared about this at all was because it's set in the 1800s in the Napoleonic Wars in Europe, and I think that's very interesting. For those who don't know, I'm very into history. I quite like a lot of history stuff, and specifically, actually, I very enjoy European history of that era, and I very much enjoy learning about Napoleonic times and stuff. So I think that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on this. I'm probably not going to play it, but I'm very interested to like watch some gameplay or something when it comes out and see kind of what it's like. Because yeah, that definitely seems interesting. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 DLC, I don't know, City Builder, who cares? I don't know what this is. New CRPG from the studio that made Disco Elysium. There's another Souls-like, Lords of the Fallen 2. So Lords of the Fallen 1 came out in 2023, and now there's a new one, Lords of the Fallen 2. Um, Sekiro anime. I don't watch anime, and I don't play Sekiro. There's a new Warhammer game, or maybe it's a expansion. I'm not really sure. Here's an interesting one, Absalom. So this was announced. It's a new beat 'em up coming to PC, Switch, PS5, PS4. But it's also kind of a roguelike. I don't really, honestly, I'm a little confused as to what exactly this is, but it seems like it's both a beat 'em up and a roguelike. Games Radar is describing it as a fusion of Golden Axe and Capcom's classic D&D brawlers. This is coming out in October, apparently, so it's not really too far off. So this is moderately interesting. I've only just recently played a couple beat 'em ups and thought they were decent enough, so I'm sort of in the market for beat 'em ups, but it's definitely not something I'm gonna buy like day one. But I just think it's a weird looking thing. You play as a wizard frog. I don't know, man. You guys got to look this up. This is a weird zany thing. I thought it was kind of interesting, and Golden Axe is something. I don't think there's really been a whole lot of games like Golden Axe in recent years, so it's interesting enough. So Ghost of Yotoi, it's not even out yet. It comes out in like September, October. I don't remember when that comes out. Let me look that up real quick because I actually can't remember when. I know. I know you all are here to watch me look things up because that's totally an entertaining thing. October 2nd, that's when it's coming out. I am interested in Ghost of Yotoi, but not right when it comes out because I still have to play Ghost of Tsushima. So I'll probably get around to it in the next year or two. We'll see what happens, but anyways, Ghost of Yotoi is not even out yet, and they're already announcing DLC for it. So there's a new Ghost of Yotoi Legends DLC that's coming out next year. So I do find it a little weird, and I think it's a little off-putting when a game's not out yet and they announce DLC for it, or when a game comes out with DLC already available, because it seems like an excuse for them to just kind of make you pay more for it, right? Because here's the thing, they don't want the backlash of putting a game out for 80 or 90 bucks. But they're totally cool putting out a game for 70 and then an ultimate edition that includes DLC that came out on launch day for 90 or 100. So, Nintendo's getting all this flack right now about Mario Kart World DLC for 80 bucks. I'm like, guys, everybody freaking pays 80 bucks for games constantly. 80, 90, 100, even 120 sometimes for these ultimate editions. And nobody bats an eye because they disguise them. It's like they'll put out 80% of the game for $70, but then if you want to get the full thing, oh, well, now it's 120, but then nobody even cares because it's like, oh, well, it's DLC. That makes sense. I don't know. I think people just people are getting tricked too easily here. But I imagine it's going to be a similar thing. At least they're not putting it out on launch day because that would be even more stupid. But at least they're hiding it like, hey, it's going to come out a few days later, or whatever, a few months later, or maybe even a year later. But anyways, Cult of the Lamb is getting new DLC in some mountains, snowy mountains. I mean, it's, there's always some new DLC for Cult of the Lamb. That game has had a lot of support. I mean, I think it's been out, what, like 7 years now? 6 years now? It's been a little while. I don't actually know exactly when that game came out, but it's been a little while, and they've had a lot of DLC. I know I have my Deku Deals. It's an app that you can, track multiple stores for, like, wish lists and stuff. I have, like, 500 games on there that I'm watching, mostly indie games that are digital only. I'm waiting for them to go on sale. Now, to be fair, I'm waiting, but then when they do go on sale, I often don't buy them anyway, so I've only bought a few things off of there. But anyways, so it's called Deku Deals. And I know I was looking up Cult of the Lamb because I was going to put it on my wish list. And when I looked up Cult of the Lamb, there were like 50 things that popped up because obviously it's on a lot of platforms, but it's also like there's just DLC after DLC after DLC. It's crazy. It's like there's so much stuff, and then there's like all these different editions. You can get the one with all the DLC. You can get the one with these DLCs, these DLCs. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a mess. I don't even know what's going on. Shovel Knight was kind of a similar thing, right? I looked up Shovel Knight, and I'm like, which one of these is the Wii U game? I want the Wii U game, and I want all of it. It's confusing sometimes when indie games put out DLC because they put out so many, and the DLCs are all so small, and then they get bundled together, and they're on sale. It's like, it's confusing sometimes, especially for some of those higher profile indie games. But that's cool. I mean, I'm glad, games like that do get their own DLC and do get more content and stuff. It's cool, but it's a little strange sometimes, it just, it's a little strange. They were getting some more news about the Outer Worlds 2. The Outer Worlds 2, obviously, that was announced at the Xbox Summer Games Fest presentation. That's coming out on October 24th. So that's gonna be a pretty big profile thing. That's by Obsidian. You know, Obsidian. I don't even know what the last thing Obsidian put out was. It's been a little while, so that's pretty cool, I guess. It's another thing in the Microsoft wheelhouse, obviously, but I guess, they're still talking about the Elder Worlds 2. Obviously, that's to be expected. This is kind of the last big event before that game comes out, because the next thing where there's going to be a lot of announcements is probably, I would say, the Game Awards. I don't think there's really anything else too big in between now and the Game Awards. Yeah, I think that's kind of the next really big thing, and obviously, games like Ghost of Yotoi and The Outer Worlds 2 will be out by then. So it is kind of strange. We're actually getting like towards the end of the year already. Like it's only August, but it already feels like we're like definitively in the second half of the year. We've been in the second half of the year for a little while, but we are like definitively in the second half of the year. There's no arguing it. We're very much like the year is wrapping up. Not quite wrapping up. I think it'll be wrapping up definitely in like October time. But that's only a month away in a little bit. So I don't know. We're definitely we're definitely making good progress on the year, I suppose. Things are winding down before too long. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm assuming there's going to be some big stuff. I know the Game Awards is going to be interesting. Obviously, that's not for a little while, but especially when the podcast is every 2 weeks now, it definitely feels like time goes pretty quickly. Because it was just a few episodes ago now that the Switch 2 came out. It really wasn't long ago. Um, anyways, it's just some weird stuff like that. So, Outer Worlds 2. Vampire the Masquerade, that game came out in 2004, the first one. And now, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, I think it was called. But now, the second Bloodlines is coming out this year, or maybe it's next year. This year, October 21st. So, this has obviously been big news. This is another, I would describe it as like a CRPG, right? It's almost like a Baldur's Gate kind of thing, from what I know. I don't know much, but that's I believe what it is. Um, but anyway, so I think that's it's weird. It's another one of those big things that people have waited for years for, and that got a release date at Gamescom finally, so people were excited about that. I guess there's going to be a big crossover between Monster Hunter Wilds and Final Fantasy XIV. So each game is going to get new content. Monster Hunter Wild people are going to be able to ride chocobos, which is definitely strange. Uh, And Final Fantasy XIV, they're going to be able to ride secrets. I don't actually know how to say that. I don't play Monster Hunter. Um, and there's going to be large monsters to fend off, Monster Hunter style. So I don't know. I don't know much about Final Fantasy XIV or Monster Hunter Wilds for that matter, but I think that's interesting that there's a crossover between the two. All right, so Atari, believe it or not, they kind of still exist. They every now and then they seem like they sort of exist. Obviously, Infogram bought them way back in the day. It's been a long time now, and they've been like kind of existing the whole time, and they've put out a few things here and there. It's like they put out some stuff here and there, and then they did the whole Atari VCS thing years ago, where they put out this Atari VCS console. Well, they kind of put out the Atari VCS console. It was supposed to be this big thing. They were taking pre-orders. They ended up canceling a bunch of pre-orders. The thing got delayed a bunch. Eventually, it did come out. Some people got one, some people didn't. Every now and then they go on. There's like 5 more units, not five, but there's like 1,000 more units. You can buy a few, and then boom, they're gone again. And it's a whole thing. And also, the Atari VCS sucks to put a bow on it all. So Atari only sometimes exists, and the whole thing with the Atari VCS is they were gonna have these big like these old games remade, like not remade, but like new games in old series and stuff, and so they did like Yars Rising, was a big one based off Yars Revenge. They did some new Space Invaders thing. I don't know. There were a few things. There really wasn't as much as they were making it out, though. I'm assuming development's been pretty slow at Atari. But now we're getting a new Atari game, finally, and this is Bubsy 4D. So, of course, Bubsy, I don't think Bubsy's had a game in quite a long time. But there was Bubsy 3D way back when, and a lot of people didn't like it. This was back on the original PlayStation. But now we have Bubsy 40. So I know, the weird thing about Bubsy 40, I had heard about this. I actually, because I didn't watch, like I said, I didn't watch the original I didn't watch the Gamescom live, so I read an article that same day about Bubsy 4D, and I was like, okay, what about it, right? Like this is nobody even likes Bubsy, but apparently Bubsy 4D, from what I've seen, and I've actually now went and watched the trailer myself, Bubsy 4D actually doesn't look half bad. It actually looks kind of interesting. So I randomly out of the blue, I'm actually kind of interested in Bubsy 4D, which I never would have really expected would be a thing. So I don't know, I might even buy Bubsy 4D. To be honest with you, like just out of the blue, I'm like, "Hey, Bubsy 4D," and I know this is a lot of people had the same opinion. They're like, it was just so random. Like, who would have ever expected? Maybe there was some leak that I missed or something, but like, who would have ever expected any sort of any sort of new Bubsy game was ever going to come out? That's sort of crazy. I don't think they ever announced. I think this is a totally new announcement as far as I know. But I don't think we got a release date for it, though, so I'm not entirely sure. I should actually check on that, because I actually don't know. Pretty sure there's no release date confirmed for that. Yeah, no release date confirmed to that. That's kind of a shame. It just says coming soon, so with Atari, that could mean any time in the next 44 years, so we'll see what happens. Alright, so that's, I think, all of the big Gamescom stuff that I saw. You know, like I said, I didn't watch it until just a couple days ago, and honestly, I didn't find any crazy announcements that I was really too concerned about, or I didn't care too much about. The only thing that was pretty interesting was Bubsy, out of the blue, randomly. But I guess, you know, we already talked about Silk Song earlier, but I also read the other day, and I think I found this original article. I'm pretty sure that this is the one I read, but apparently, Hollow Knight a few days ago peaked on Steam. It had the most concurrent players it's had since 2022, I believe. Um, yeah, they had almost 40,000 players, concurrent players, and their previous record was back in 2022 with like 20,000. So, of course, you know, as soon as Silk Song got announced, you know, it's interesting because I actually saw some guy posting on Blue Sky as well. He's like, man, I didn't get a chance to play Hollow Knight before Silk Song was coming out. And I'm like, bro, it's been like 7 years, 8 years, you know? Like, how is it that all of these years people have been complaining about how it's been such a long wait for Silk Song? And now that the game's coming out, they're like, well, shoot, it hasn't been long enough. I haven't had enough time to play it. I'm like, what's wrong with you people? So obviously there's people in both camps. There's people that are like, hey, you know, I played this 8 years ago and I've been waiting for a new game. But there's also people in the camp that are like, shoot, well, I thought this game was never coming, so I didn't play it. And I think that is part of the problem with such a short announcement to release, you know, schedule. If I hear about a game that's coming out in 3 months, then yeah, maybe I have an opportunity to go back and play the old one. But if it's coming out in 2 weeks, maybe not so much, you know. I mean, if I had heard that Hollow Knight Silk Song was coming out 3 or 4 months from now, then yeah, maybe I would have went and tried to play the original one earlier. But because it's coming out so soon, I'm like, you know. So I'm kind of in the same boat, but I'm not like too upset about it. I know some people are like, oh my gosh, no, I can't play Hollow Knight. They haven't given me enough time to play Hollow Knight before Silk Song. I don't know. Anyways, I find it really funny that there's like it's like a double-edged sword, right? So for some people, it's like, hey, finally, you know, we get the new game, and for other people, it's like, what? It's not time yet. So anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting. Here we go. I pulled up an article about the Kirby Air Riders Direct, not because I needed to read anything about it, but just because I had to remember to talk about it, because honestly, I don't think the Kirby Air Riders Direct was all that exhilarating. It was, you know, it was a Kirby Air Riders Direct. I think I might have talked about this a little bit in the first segment, but I actually recorded that yesterday, so I'm not entirely sure that I did. I definitely didn't go into full detail, so I'll briefly mention a few things. To be honest, you know, there was that Mario Kart World Direct back in May. Was it May or no? I think it was early June. I think they did it just a few days before launch. Anyways, there was that Mario Kart World Direct, and when that Direct happened, I was very disappointed. I actually live streamed my reaction to it, and I basically didn't say a word. I was just watching it, and I was like, huh. Okay, we knew that. We knew that. Yep, we knew that. We knew that. You know, and that was the Mario Kart World Direct. The Bonanza Direct happened instead, like, you know, a month later, and the Bonanza Direct was way better. It blew the Mario Kart World Direct out of the water. And to be fair, I do kind of like this new format of the Nintendo Directs that are game specific. Now, I hope this doesn't take away from, you know, these big announcement Nintendo Directs, which, to be fair, this year I think it may have. But also this year is a little bit weird because, you know, it's been such a big year with the Switch 2 coming out. So I can respect that Nintendo Directs are not going to be on a regular schedule this year, but I hope that next year they can go back to a regular schedule and also still have these game-specific Directs, because these game-specific Directs are pretty cool, I think. I think they're a neat idea. So anyways, so, the Kirby Air Riders Direct, I would say was better than the Mario Kart World Direct, because not much can be worse. Because we actually didn't know the stuff they were telling us. Like, we knew pretty much nothing about Kirby Air Riders, and they did actually give us quite a bit of information, which was cool. But it had nothing on the Bananza Direct, and I think part of it is because I'm just more excited about Bananza. I played the game. It's my second favorite game of all time now, probably. So, I like Bananza a lot more, and I was already more excited about Bananza then than I was when the Kirby Air Riders Direct dropped for Kirby Air Riders. So I think that kind of played into it as well, but I also think it wasn't quite as good a Direct as the Bonanza one, because, as much as I think the Mario Kart World Direct was probably too short, and the Bonanza one might have also been too short, the Bonanza one was, like, packed with information. It was very concise, very to the point, and, it really gives you a lot of information. The Kirby Air Riders Direct also gave us a lot of information, but it wasn't concise. It was all, it was very long, actually. It was like a 45-minute Direct or something on information that they probably could have put out in a newsletter. That's how I felt about the Kirby Air Riders Direct. Like, they definitely could have put this stuff out in, like, they could have done a 15-minute Direct. I think Mario Kart World should have had the 45-minute Direct. Bonanza should have been, like, 30, and then Kirby Air Riders should have been, like, 15. But instead, it's been sort of the opposite way. Where Mario Kart World was the one that they tried to keep short and sweet. But the problem with Mario Kart World is we already knew some of the stuff that they were telling us, so it didn't make sense. It was short, but also not sweet, because we knew everything. So it was stupid. The Kirby Air Riders Direct, this was the one that we didn't know stuff about, and they just drew it out like, man, we're going to talk all day about this and this. And I like Sakurai, but man, the man's a chatterbox. They need to do some editing. They need some editors. Now, to be fair, look at me. I'm here doing the same thing. But, like, man, like, that guy does not shut up. Much as I think he makes some good games, sometimes I'm like, what is he even talking about? So, no, I don't mean to disrespect Masahiro Sakurai. I respect his games and stuff, especially, like, Smash Brothers, but man, it is, sometimes I'm just here like, man, you've got nothing to say. It's like Nintendo came to him yesterday, and they're like, hey, you wanna make us a little Direct about, Kirby Air Riders? And he's like, sure. And so they just didn't edit it. They did it all one take, and he just kind of rambled for a little while, and they called it good. That's the impression I get. Obviously, that's not exactly what happened, but that is the impression I get. I just found it really strange. I'm not saying it was low quality, but I'm just saying I feel like he kind of. I don't think all the information was relevant. I don't think all of it was necessary. I think they were really trying really hard to sell us on Kirby Air Riders. I think here's what's happened, right? Kirby Air Riders, they originally announced for 2025. I think there was always the intention that game could get pushed to 2026. And I think the reason why they had it in November was, in case there wasn't enough stuff to fill those holes, they wanted something out, in the first launch year. But also, I think the reason it did end up coming out in 2025, or it is coming out in 2025, is because Mario Kart World has done so bad online. Like, the online numbers for Mario Kart World are pretty pitiful. So honestly, I think that's part of why Kirby Air Riders is actually coming out in 2025. I was expecting for it to be pushed to 2026, but it has not, and it is actually coming out in 2025. I believe November. Gosh, I need to remember these release dates better. It's coming out in November, that's for sure. Was it the 20th? I want to say it was the 20th. Yeah, the 20th. Okay, I was actually right this time. Which, by the way, Kirby Air Riders got some pretty good box art. I like the box art. But anyways, so Kirby Air Riders, that's coming out November 20th. I'm not going to pick it up day one. I might play it at some point next year, but I'm not that interested. I'm not a huge racing game guy, but on top of that, it doesn't really seem like there's much going on. It feels like there's not much going on, but there's also a lot going on at the same time. And honestly, Kirby Air Riders, from what they showed in this Direct, it actually kind of gave me F-Zero vibes, right? And I know it's also very similar to the original Kirby Air Ride, but I think the thing about Kirby Air Ride is it's more fast-paced. There's more chaos, more items. There's a lot of stuff going on, kind of like F-Zero. And so, for some reason, I was getting F-Zero vibes. I'm not really sure if, as somebody who hasn't really played a whole lot of F-Zero, or hasn't played Kirby Air Ride, maybe I'm just crazy, but that's kind of what I was getting from this. And that's cool. And I do want to play it at some point, but I'm not really looking to pick it up anytime soon. I kind of wish they would have made a Smash Brothers instead, but I understand making another Smash Brothers game is going to be pretty ambitious, and I think there's a really good chance we're not going to get another Smash Brothers game this generation. I think there's a really good chance that they push Smash Brothers to next generation, and we just don't see one on the Switch 2. And honestly, I won't even be that disappointed if that ends up being the case. I think that's totally acceptable and fine. It is what it is. So, anyways, we could end up getting Kirby. We are going to end up getting Kirby Air Riders. Like I said, I'm not going to pick it up on launch. I'm probably going to get it at some point, whether that's later on in the year in December, or whether that's next year, whether it's 2 years from now. I'll play it at some point. I'm just not really looking to anytime too soon. So that's kind of where we're at. Bungie, they're originally the Halo people, then they got bought by Sony. Now they're the Destiny people. So at one point, Bungie was making a game called Marathon. That was supposed to come out this September. But back in June, it was delayed indefinitely. I'm reading off a GameSpot article, basically. Because Bungie was fully integrating into PlayStation Studios. Pete Parsons was the former Bungie boss, and he is now also, he's stepping down, and they're bringing in a new guy. Who's the new guy? Justin Truman. He's gonna be the new head of Bungie. So there you go. I don't, like I said, I mean, I don't play Destiny. I haven't played the Halo games either. I do plan to play the Halo games at some point. I don't play Destiny. This isn't a big deal for me, but I know that that's going to affect a lot of people. I don't know what's exactly going to happen with Destiny and all this when they do fully lose independence to Sony, but I don't know. If there are some people out there that are like, man, Sony's out here buying up all these studios and, putting them together. I'm like, guys, are you crazy? Look at the Microsoft corner, man. Look at the Microsoft corner, because they're going crazy. Everybody's getting incorporated to Microsoft Studios. Soon enough, they're gonna be buying Nintendo. It's gonna be Armageddon out here with Microsoft. So, honestly, I'm not like upset with Sony here about buying up these studios. I don't think they're doing nearly as much damage as Microsoft is. Microsoft is kind of being a bit of a problem right now. Sony, not so much. It is what it is. I'm not like a Sony fanboy. I'm not a Sony pony. It is what it is. It's fine. It's the way things go. But yeah, I do think Microsoft's being a little too aggressive right now. Speaking of Microsoft, the ROG Xbox Ally and the ROG Xbox Ally X. I think I might have talked about this last show, but those are coming out on October 16th. We've known about this for a little while now. I don't really have much else to say about this. Personally, I'm not going to buy one. The things are like $12,000 now. I think they're, what is it, 900, 950, I think is what they said. Maybe 900, 1,000, whatever it was. Or maybe it was 800 and 950. Whatever it is, it's expensive. We talked about it last week, I believe, but I just forgot to mention it again because, first of all, ROG Xbox Ally X, I like saying that every show because that's the most ridiculous name I've ever heard. And also because, I don't know, they're stupid and I like to complain about them. PS5. Speaking of things that are expensive, the PS5 is now increasing in price. All of them, actually. So the PS5, the one with the disc drive, is going up to $550. Actually, it already has. I say it's going to, but it already has gone up. Went up a few days ago, earlier this week. I actually went out to Walmart and I saw it for myself. I was like, oh my gosh, it's expensive now. Not that it wasn't before, but now it's more expensive. PS5 Digital Edition is $500 now, and PS5 Pro is $750. Now, I don't think they're selling that 20th or 30th anniversary thing anymore. But I know that one at one point was $800, so I don't know if they're selling that anymore. I don't think so. But anyway, so the point is, everything's going up. The Xbox was going up, not long ago, and now PlayStation's also going up. I know just a month ago or so, the PlayStation went up everywhere in the world but the US, basically, and now it's gone up also in the US, so we caught up eventually, as it turns out. But anyways, I'm not looking to buy another PS5, but this obviously is going to, take away from people that do want one. It comes even more expensive, even more unattainable, and it's even more pushes the idea that the next console is likely going to be like $1,000, so it's not great, not a great situation, but at the same time, we do kind of expect this kind of stuff, recently with how much everything's been going up. But I think really Meta kind of led the charge here a couple of years ago when they increased the Meta Quest 2, and then they increased it again, and then the 3 came out and they increased that. And it's just like, I think Meta's really been the problem here. But everybody's also raising prices. I know Nintendo, just recently they raised the price of all the Switch 1 stuff, and a couple of the Switch 2 like accessories, like the Pro Controller and stuff went up, the Joy-Cons went up. So everybody's raising prices, basically, and it's not a good situation, but at least the games aren't necessarily going up in quite the same way. I know people are like, oh, there's $80 games on Switch 2. Honestly, though, because of all the third-party stuff, I've found that Switch 2 games are actually cheaper. and an average. The ones I buy, at least, they seem to be cheaper than the Switch One games. But anyway, that's a topic for another time. I don't want to get too much into that. All right, so I know I said earlier the next big announcement thing was the Game Awards, but I actually forgot about Tokyo Game Show. I was reading this article, so new Forza Horizon game hasn't been announced yet, but there's a rumor saying that it could be announced at this Tokyo Game Show. So there was a Australian car importer, and they tweeted out that they had people from the Forza Horizon Studio Playground games taking pictures of cars, KEI, I don't know how to say that, cars, to about something related to putting them in Forza. I think they were taking pictures to use them. It says to use them as the basis for their digital versions. So some people have taken this because I guess these cars are very popular in Japan. Some people have suggested that this is evidence of the Forza Horizon game. I don't know all the details here. I'm just kind of paraphrasing. The Forza Horizon game could be in Japan. The Forza Horizon 6. Forza Horizon 6 could end up being in Japan. Also, because they were saying it could be announced at the Tokyo Game Show, that's also, people are using that as evidence that it could be in Japan as well, because, they would announce it in the place that it's coming out. I don't know. I don't know all the details here. I'm not going to read through all these things. I hadn't heard this information until I was looking up stuff for this podcast episode. So I don't know all the details. You should probably go find somebody who actually does know all the details. But anyways, Forza Horizon 6, I suppose, could end up in Japan. I think that's a cool setting for a Forza Horizon game. I haven't played the other Forza Horizon games because they're on Xbox. I know Forza Horizon 5 did finally come over to PlayStation, so I might end up playing it there, or I'll just wait and see if it ever comes to Switch 2. I don't know if it will, but it could. We'll see what happens. Another big leak. Nate the Hate, Nate the Hate's always leaking some stuff. He posted on Twitter claiming that Starfield will be coming to Switch 2 sometime in 2026. Starfield is obviously that one, pretty much the only game Microsoft's put out in the last 5 years. No, not quite, but it's one of the only ones. And obviously, so there was the leak from Nate the Hate, but we also had Instant Gaming. They're an online retailer of video games. They accidentally, I guess, listed Starfield under recently added games for Switch 2. So both of these leaks together, I think, are pretty good evidence that Starfield is in fact coming to Switch 2. Obviously, this isn't confirmed. We don't know for sure. But I think between Nate the Hate, who's obviously very reliable, and also the online store listing, those are usually pretty reliable too. Usually those things end up being true. I do believe that Starfield is truly coming to the Switch 2. Now, who knows when it's going to be? Nate the Hate says 2026. Who knows? It could end up being later. We'll see what happens, but it does seem like Starfield is going to come to Switch 2. Starfield seems like the kind of game that I'll probably see what the reception is, how well it runs on Switch 2, and then I'll consider playing it. So I'm not going to jump on it immediately, though. I'm not really too excited about it, but it seems mildly interesting. So if it runs well, maybe. Because I don't want to play it on Xbox. I guess I could play it on PlayStation as well, but I don't know. If it comes to Switch 2 and it runs well, I might consider it. Metroid Prime 4 got rated by the ESRB. Obviously, this happens a lot. Games get rated for the ESRB shortly before they come out. And sometimes ESRB, they don't put stuff out, but people find stuff that's been rated and before it's been announced. And so sometimes, I don't know, sometimes, we get leaks and stuff from them. This is obviously not a leak, but I don't know, it's not really important news, but Metroid Prime 4 has been rated T for teen, so that's cool, I guess. It's just good to know that that game probably is actually coming out when they say it is. Sometimes it gives us some better confirmation, for sure, because we can't always trust what Nintendo says when it comes to a game like Metroid Prime 4. All right, Yooka-Replayley. I mentioned that a little bit earlier this show. Yooka-Replayley is the remake of the original Yooka-Laylee game from 2017, 2018, whatever it is. They put out that game, and it was, it's loosely based on Banjo-Kazooie. For those who don't know, Yooka-Laylee is made by Playtonic. So Playtonic is a studio that was originally founded by people who left Rare after the Microsoft acquisition, and so there's obviously some influence there from Banjo-Kazooie and from Donkey Kong Country and those kinds of games. And so, they put out Yooka-Laylee. It did pretty well. It was an indie game, kind of an indie game, sort of, back, a while ago, and it did pretty well. And they put out Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, which is a 2D version. So the original Yooka-Laylee was kind of based on Banjo-Kazooie, and the Impossible Lair was sort of based on Donkey Kong Country. So they're remaking the first one now. and it's coming out on Switch 2, PS5, and Xbox Series X. I don't think it's coming out on last gen stuff. I think it's just modern consoles, and it looks like it's actually getting a full physical release, not from limited run or anything. It's actually getting like a proper release. It's going to be $50 apparently, in US, which is crazy. It's another one of those super cheap ones. So I say super cheap. It's still expensive, but it's not as expensive as many. So that's pretty cool. And Video Games Plus, they're a supplier of video games in Canada, but they also, I think they're online, so a lot of people probably buy from the US as well. They showed a screenshot suggesting that there was a full game on the cartridge for Switch 2, and they showed some box art. I don't know if this is, I think this is placeholder box art. So it doesn't say anything about a game key card, but it might not, if it is a game key card. But they are saying that there's a full game on the cartridge, so I'm assuming they're right here. I'm assuming they're not just making this up. So I don't know. I guess it could be, but it does seem like we're actually going to get the full game on the cartridge for Yuka Replay, and it's going to come out physically, and it's only gonna be $50. So if that's gonna happen, I'm all there day one. Let's do it. Let's get let's get Yuka Replay. I'm down. So that's pretty cool. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of the year of racing games, isn't it? Because we had Mario Kart World, we're having Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, and we're getting Kirby Air Riders. So it's kind of a big thing. They're all coming out on Switch 2. They're coming. I mean, Sonic Racing Cross Worlds coming out everywhere, but they're all coming out on Switch 2. This is coming out on September 25th. So that's really not too far from now. It's actually exactly a month as of today when I'm recording this. Obviously, for anybody who's watching this when it comes out or later, it's going to be later. But anyways, they announced a open network test taking place from the 29th of August, which is pretty soon, to the 1st of September. So I will probably try this out. It's kind of like the drag and drive thing that happened, back weeks ago. But yeah, you're going to be able to play only as Sonic, I believe. But you'll be able to, to try out the game, get a feel for how it races and stuff, and, get an idea for a couple of the tracks and stuff before it comes out, obviously, so they can test their online interface. And I mean, that's going to be pretty common with online games. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I'm kind of interested in Sonic Racing Cross World. It's another thing that I probably won't buy right when it comes out. We'll see. I don't know. Probably not, though. I'm interested to see if it'll have any single-player content. If it does have any sort of, like, story mode or any, like, a Grand Prix thing or anything like that, then I probably will buy it. Maybe not day one, but at some point. But otherwise, we'll see what happens. I know it's going to be, like, a full-price thing, like $70, $80, whatever, so it's going to be expensive. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I might buy it, like, next year or something, or later this year. Probably not on launch, but I'll definitely try out this, online network test so I can have an opinion on it because I'm kind of curious about how it feels to control. That'll definitely be a big consideration on whether or not I play it. There's a Lego Genesis or Mega Drive, depending on your region, that's coming out. So they did a Lego Game Boy a while back, but now apparently it's also the Genesis is getting Lego. So Lego keeps putting out a bunch of video game consoles. I saw like a Mega Bloks Xbox 360 at Target the other day as well. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that, I guess. This is the leak, I believe. I don't think it's actually fully confirmed. But yeah, I don't know how I don't know how reliable Lego set leaks are, but it's apparently there's a Genesis controller coming out. I'm assuming that'll mean the console will also come out. So I don't know. It seems believable enough. I don't know if it's happening or not, but based on the leak, it's the 3-button controller with the ABC rather than the ABC XYZ controller. But anyway, so I think that'd be kind of cool. I'm not gonna like buy one, but it's interesting. All right, so I heard about this a while back. So Acclaim, right? They were around back in the day. Acclaim made a lot of stuff back on Super Nintendo. They made a lot of stuff back on 64, I think PS1. They made some stuff, and then they kind of disappeared. They went bankrupt. They vanished. Acclaim is back. They came back earlier this year, and I heard about it back then, but I didn't really know all the details. I don't know if they were really making anything. I was like, surely they must be making something. But apparently, just a couple days ago, they had a PR release where they promised big things to come, and it's supposedly hard at work on its mission to bring players unforgettable, lasting experiences that'll make them keep coming back for more. I'm reading this from a Nintendo Life article. So apparently, there's going to be some big thing next week. Everyone's saying, or some I don't know if the leakers are saying or they said it. I didn't actually read the post from them, but apparently Apparently there's apparently gonna be some Acclaim stuff. I guess there's a video here linked actually. So I didn't watch this beforehand. I know I've failed here. But yeah, they're teasing something. It says transmission incoming. So I think this is supposed to be from next week. So I don't know what Acclaim's making, but Acclaim's apparently making a new game. Which is definitely weird because they've been gone for a long time, and apparently they're coming back. So cool, I guess. I don't have any attachment to Acclaim specifically, but I guess I suppose that's interesting. So, all right. Sorry if this felt a little rushed of a news segment. The problem is I don't really know about a lot of these things. You know, I basically read all these things earlier today before I recorded this, and so I didn't. I don't feel like I was totally knowledgeable on what I was talking about. So I don't know. I'm not always. I'm not the best. If you're really looking for someone who knows what they're talking about, there's other people better out there. Jeff Gerstmans of the world. But anyways, I like to think that I at least have some knowledge, and I like sharing my opinions on things. So that's kind of why I'm here, and I hope that's why you're here too. But anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. I think this is going to be the end of the podcast episode. This is a pretty good length show. Next episode, I will have started school, so things might slow down a little bit on YouTube. I know they're already pretty slow, but things might slow down even further. Maybe they'll even pick up, though, because maybe I want to put more focus into it. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to promise anything specific, but I do think the podcast will continue to go out every other week. I think this is going to be a fine schedule. I think I'll be able to manage it. Might be a little tough, but I think I'll manage. And I don't know, maybe the podcast episodes will be a little shorter. I hope not, but it might have to be that way because I might just have less to talk about with school going on and everything. So it's going to obviously, I'll find out for sure what's going to happen. Sorry, what's going to happen when I go back to school because then I'll kind of have an idea of what the workload's going to be. So we'll see what happens, but I'm hoping for some time to continue making the podcast, and I think I'll at least be able to continue making it, even if the episodes have to be a little bit shorter. So we'll see what happens. Thanks again for anybody who tuned out, or tuned in, or whatever you did. I don't know. Welcome. Hello. Bye. I don't even know what I'm saying. Anyways, join the Discord down below. Please give me video suggestions. I've been running a little short on ideas for video suggestions lately. You can also email the podcast at notjustnintendo@gmail.com. That is NOTJUSTNINTENDO@gmail.com. You can email any questions in there. You can also, if you're on YouTube or Spotify, you could just comment on the episode and you can leave your questions there. Or you can actually join the Discord and leave your questions in there. There's a channel called Podcast Emails. I don't think anybody's ever used that, so you can use that if you want to. Be the first one, right? With all that said, thanks again. I'm hoping to have a video out next week or so. We'll see what happens. I'm kind of hoping to get things rolling again. I'm probably going to do a Let's Play again. I know I said I wasn't going to do Let's Plays, but I think I am actually going to do another one. And go subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not there already, and go subscribe to my other YouTube channels. I have a Minecraft one and a geography one, if you're into that kind of stuff. And with all that said, thanks again. I'll see you all in 2 weeks, or in my next video if you want to tune into that. I might do a live stream in the next 2 weeks as well. And that'll be it for me. Goodbye, everybody, and let's get some Bubsy 4D, right?